Yo, what's going on, guys? It's Houston Sports Talk right in the video today, and today I'm going to be doing my Houston Rockets free agency predictions. As free agency is close, it's very close from starting. I mean, we're less than a day away. As free agency opens up at 5 o'clock, so it's like 12:30, 1 o'clock. So in that case, free agency starts in about 16, 17 hours. So I'm excited for free agency to open up. I already did my NBA free agency prediction video for like all the teams and all the free agents. Now I'm going to be doing free agency predictions and preview for my Houston Rockets. Let's get into it. Rockets have interest in lots of players. Here are the list of players the Rockets are interested in going into tomorrow's free agency opening up. Fred VanVleet, Dylan Brooks, Brook Lopez, Dwight Powell, Kyle Kuzma as well. There's a couple other names. I just think those are like the five most likely names for the Rockets to sign in free agency. Obviously, you can't sign all those guys. The Rockets could sign 3 out of the 5. But let's get into it. So the Rockets can spend in the area of $62 to $60 million in free agency on this year's salary for the 23-24 season. As you know, they're in the position where they have to spend 60, but if they want to, they can also spend in the area of 62 to $66 million on salary. That's what I saw on ESPN today. Bobby Marks I was watching NBA. What is it? It used to be The Jump. That's what it used to be called, but it's not called NBA Today. So I was watching NBA Today, and Bobby Marks was kind of laying out, previewing everything, and he was talking about how the Rockets, they're in the area to spend in the area of $62 to $66 million in free agency. So, yeah. So the Rockets are gonna spend in the area of $60 million in free agency, but can spend more in the 62 to 66 range. So I'm gonna go over my free agency predictions for the Rockets. I think, and I know the Rockets fans are gonna like some of these moves, but they're good moves. I think the Rockets will sign Fred VanVleet to a 2-year, $80 million deal to sign VanVleet, who averaged almost 20 points per game this season on 37% three-point shooting, a great defender as well, to a two-time All-Star as well. Two-time All-Star as well, to get him on the roster. And he'll be the starting point guard for the Houston Rockets. You put him at the 1, Jalen at the 2, and then I think there would probably, honestly, in my opinion, I think there would be probably a battle of who's going to be the starting small forward, whether it be Amen Thompson or Dylan Brooks, or even Cam Whitmore might be in that conversation as well. And then Jabari Smith Jr. at the 4, and then at the 5, Alperen Sengun. I kind of hinted right there who I thought is going to be the Rockets' second signing in free agency. I think the Rockets are going to sign Dylan Brooks to a 3-year, $45 million deal with a team option at the end of at the end of year 2. I think the Rockets are a little bit overpaying him. I think Brooks would probably agree to a 3-year, $42 million deal. So you're paying him $3 million extra. It's not that huge. It's not that it's not that bigger. It's just it's a little bit. 45 is greater than 42, and I think you're trying to do that. I don't think Dylan Brooks would be comfortable with a team option at the end of year 2 on a 42, but I think Dylan Brooks would be comfortable at a team option at the end of the year, at the end of year 2 on a $45 million contract. But yeah, so Dylan Brooks signs with the Rockets for a 3-year, $45 million deal with a team option at the end of year 2. So you add those two guys in. I know Rockets fans don't want us to sign Fred VanVleet and Dylan Brooks, but Dylan Brooks is a cheap option for the Rockets, and he's a good cheap option as well for Houston. I mean, let's go over some of his stats this season. If you want to view some of his stats for the Grizzlies this season. He averaged 14 points per game and shot 35% for 3. Right there, that shows you one thing. He's a solid 3-point shooter. I know Dylan Brooks shot horrible from 3 in the playoffs, but he's a good 3-point shooter. And here is 100% fact: the Rockets were horrible from the 3-pointer last season. And even though Dylan Brooks struggled from 3 in the playoffs and is only shooting 35%, Dylan Brooks is a good shooter coming into this Rockets offense. Because you look at the Rockets 3-point shooting. Besides Jalen Green and Kevin Porter Jr., who were solid 3-point shooters for the Rockets, besides those two guys, and maybe even sometimes Jabari Smith Jr., the Rockets 3-point shooting was horrible. I thought they didn't take enough 3-point shots, but they didn't make enough either. The Rockets, they would be lucky to make even 8 3-pointers in a game, which sounds crazy. I remember in the regular season, if they would go over 10 or 11 3-pointers in a game, I would be like, okay, this is unbelievable. And that is something I'm not used to as a Rockets fan. I'm with the Rockets, I'm used to them, shooting threes all the time. So, to be honest with you, seeing the Rockets have their 3-point struggles as they did last year, as they were one of the worst 3-point shooting teams in the NBA last season, that was weird to watch as a Rockets season, as the Rockets used to chunk up threes all the time. The Rockets chunking up threes was one of the reasons why the Rockets didn't go to the NBA Finals, because they missed 27 straight 3-pointers. The Rockets would barely even take 27 3-point attempts in a single game, for the Rockets in the regular season. But in free agency, you add in 2 really solid 3-point shooters. You add in Fred VanVleet, a guy who shot 37% from 3, a good 3-point shooter as well. You add in Dylan Brooks, who I know he struggled from 3 in the playoffs, was terrible from 3 in the playoffs, but he's a good 3-point shooter. He shot really good from 3 in the season, and adding his shooting, even though he struggles sometimes from shooting, he's a good shooter coming into this Rockets team because of how terrible the Rockets were at 3-point shooting last year. And that's not it. Both of these guys are both good defensive players. Dylan Brooks is an all-NBA defensive player. I mean, I at first, I didn't want the Rockets to sign Dylan Brooks. I was totally against the move. But being honest with you guys, I am totally on board for the Houston Rockets to sign Dylan Brooks now, just because the fact that this guy's an all NBA defensive player. Look how much how good the defense is gonna be next season. You have Ime Udoka as your head coach. Fred VanVleet most likely coming into the Rockets. He's a really good defensive player. You drafted Amen Thompson. He's, in my opinion, the best defensive player of the 2023 draft class. KPJ averaged, I think, like 2.5, 3 steals per game for the Rockets last year. Jabari Smith Jr. is like it's just an absolute insane shot blocker. If you add in Dylan Brooks, he's an all-NBA defensive player. You have guys like Jayshawn Tate and Tari Eason, who are just great defenders. Cam Whitmore, another guy who is a really solid defender. The only flaws of this Rockets defense is Jalen Green and Alperen Sengun. And what I've heard is that both of these guys are trying to work and improve their defense. So the Rockets' defense next year would be pretty scary. Their 3-point shooting would improve, adding in Cam Whitmore, Dylan Brooks, and Fred VanVleet, so that your 3-point shooting is improving, your defense is improving, your leadership is improving with adding in Fred VanVleet and Dylan Brooks as leaders, and then Ime Udoka as well, who is a great NBA head coach. So, as much as Rockets fans don't want these 2 moves to happen, they're 2 great moves for the Rockets, and if they're gonna spend their money, this is how the Rockets should spend it. I wanted the Rockets to sign Cam Johnson, but it's very unlikely. The Nets are going to match any offer. Cam Johnson would be a great fit for the Rockets, but the Nets are going to match any offer. A couple other guys in free agency. I think Kuzma's too expensive. I'm trying to think of some other guys. At the guard position, Harden's not a free agent anymore. He was too expensive even before he wasn't a free agent. Chris Middleton, too many injuries. Stay away from him. So if you're looking at that guard position, Fred VanVleet's the best option for the Rockets. I mean, yes, the Rockets have interest in Austin Reeves, but Lakers are going to match any offer that is given Austin Reeves. So, I mean, honestly, the Rockets would have to spend like three of the 4 quarters of their money that they have to spend to land Austin Reeves, and I still don't even know if that'd be enough. You have $60 million in free agency to spend, and you could probably offer Austin Reeves like $35 to $40 million a year, and I still think the Lakers would think about matching. And obviously, you're not going to give Austin Reeves $35 to $40 million a year. So, Austin Reeves, he's not an option. D'Lo, hell no. So VanVleet, you might be overpaying for him, but he's a good player. Also, another thing you don't view as is that, like Van Vliet was on a Raptors team last year where there was a lot of scoring on that Raptors team. They had Siakam, they had OG, they had Scotty Barnes, they had Gary Trent Jr., they had Jakob Poeltl at the end of the year as well. Jakob Poeltl averaged 12 and 10, Siakam averaged 21, Barnes averaged 15. OG averaged 17. Gary Trent Jr. averaged 17. So they were scoring everywhere for that Raptors team. So, I mean, I know Van Vliet only averaged 19 points per game after coming off a really good season where he averaged like 20 or 21 points per game the season before with the Raptors and was an all-star. But the guy for the Raptors, their scoring was unbelievable. Scotty Barnes averaged 15. Siakam had statistically had his best year of his career, averaging almost 25. OG improved massively for the Raptors last season, averaging almost 17. Gary Trent also averaged 17. Jakob Poeltl averaged 12 and 10. So there was a lot of scoring for that Raptors team. And Fred VanVleet also averaged almost 8 assists per game for the Raptors. He was more of the facilitator for the Raptors team. And honestly, I feel like he would be more of a scoring option for the Rockets than he was for the Raptors if he comes to the Rockets. I could see VanVleet averaging in the area of 20 to maybe 23 points per game, if not more than that, for the Houston Rockets if he comes in for the Houston Rockets. You guys have any thoughts? One more. There's one more thing, because the Rockets would still have some leftover money and the Rockets want to sign a center. No, it is not Brook Lopez. I know he's on the screen, but the Rockets are interested in Dwight Powell from the Dallas Mavericks, so the Rockets signing Dwight Powell to a 1-year, $9.2 million contract to land the Rockets a backup center. You want a backup center. You've been looking. You wanted one in the draft. You got Ken Whitmore and Amen Thompson. You were looking at centers in the trade market. I don't think you're gonna end up getting anybody. And then now, free agency, Brook Lopez, I don't think that's an option. He's going back to the Bucks. Jakob Poeltl, I think he's too expensive. The Spurs are willing to offer him $20 million a year. I think Dwight Powell, he's the cheapest option as a backup center. He's a good scorer. He's a good rebounder. Averaged 7 and 5 this season with the Mavs. I think it'd be a good fit for the Rockets on like a one year, $8 to $9 million deal, maybe even 10 if you have to offer him 10 to join the Rockets to be a backup center for the Houston Rockets. So, final free agency recap for the Houston Rockets: of the Houston Rockets signing Fred VanVleet to a 2-year, $80 million deal, Dillon Brooks to a 3-year, $45 million deal with a team option at the end of year 2, and then Dwight Powell to a 1-year, $9.5 million contract. You guys have any thoughts on my Rockets free agency predictions? That's it for the video. Hope you guys enjoyed, and peace out. Go Rockets.